She ignored her mother's warnings again and again. She opened the forbidden room, hearing whispers in the cradle. She stared into the mirror. Her reflection smiled with sharp teeth. She walked the abandoned road, where a pale man appeared beside her car. She waved at the strange neighbor, who tapped on her window at night. She entered the forest, where whispers pulled her off the path. She answered the phone. "I'm inside," the voice said. She opened a red door, finding Claus waiting. She babysat in the mansion, where a figure rocked the crib. She touched the doll, hearing footsteps. She met the stranger and never returned. 1. The missed train, 335 words. David had always been a creature of habit. Every morning, he woke up at 6:30, dressed in his usual gray suit, and caught the 7:15 train to work. But on this particular Thursday, something inside him told him to take a break. He had been exhausted for weeks, and the thought of sitting in his office for another long day was unbearable. With a sigh, he decided, just this once I'll skip work. Instead of rushing to the station, David made himself coffee and stepped onto his balcony, watching the city slowly come alive. For the first time in months, he felt strangely peaceful. Around 7:20, as he scrolled through his phone, a breaking news alert appeared. Train derailment, dozens injured. His heart dropped. The train mentioned was the 7:15 route, the very train he had been taking every single day for the past 5 years. Images soon flooded the news. The twisted metal of the carriages, the smoke rising above the tracks, the chaos of rescuers pulling people to safety. David's hands trembled. If he hadn't decided to skip work, he would have been right there, trapped inside that wreck. He sank into his chair, shaken to his core. It wasn't just a day off. It was fate, a silent force that had pulled him away from disaster. Later that day, David walked through the park, noticing details he had ignored for years. The laugh. James woke up that morning with no intention of going to work. His boss had been unbearable lately, and his motivation was at its lowest. One day won't hurt, he muttered to himself as he turned off his alarm and decided to stay home. With nothing planned, he wandered into the city later that afternoon, enjoying the freedom he hadn't felt in years. As he sat on a park bench, sipping a cheap cup of coffee, an old man approached him. The stranger's clothes were worn out, his hair unkempt, but his eyes carried an intensity that made James uneasy. Without asking, the man sat beside him and whispered, "You weren't supposed to take the train today." James froze. He hadn't told anyone he skipped work, let alone about the train he usually caught. "Excuse me?" he asked nervously. The old man smiled faintly. "Sometimes, life pushes us in a different direction for a reason. Don't ignore it." Before James could respond, the man stood up and walked away, disappearing into the crowd as if he had never been there. Confused and unsettled, James pulled out his phone. His jaw dropped. Breaking news. Explosion at Central Station. Multiple casualties. It was the very station he would have been at if he had gone to work. His hands shook as he tried to comprehend what just happened. Who was that stranger? How'd he know? Was it just coincidence? Or had he truly been warned? That night, James lay awake, replaying every word in his head. The encounter felt more than chance. It felt like destiny. One thing was certain. From that day forward, he would never ignore the quiet whispers of life steering him towards safety. Michael had always lived a routine life. Work, home, sleep, repeated day after day. But one Thursday morning, he woke up feeling drained. His gut told him to take a day off. For once, he listened. Instead of rushing to the office, he made tea and wandered around his quiet house. As he cleaned the attic, he stumbled upon a dusty old box tucked away behind a stack of broken chairs. Inside were yellowed papers, faded photographs, and, at the very bottom, an envelope sealed with wax. Curious, he opened it. The letter inside was dated 1975, written in neat handwriting. As Michael read, his heart pounded. It was from his late grandfather, addressed not to family, but to him. The words seemed impossible. The letter spoke of secrets buried in the family's past, a hidden inheritance, a betrayal that split blood relatives apart, and a warning that one day, someone in the family would need to uncover the truth. Michael couldn't believe it. How could his grandfather have written directly to him decades earlier? The more he read, the more he realized the letter had predicted specific events in his own life. His career, his struggles, even his loneliness. It was as if the old man had seen the future. Shaken, Michael followed the letter's instructions, digging deeper into the box. He found keys, old bank records, and a map pointing to a rural property he never knew his family. His mind raced. What else had been hidden all these years? That day off work became the turning point of his life. Skipping a single day had led him to a discovery that would change everything he thought he knew about his family and himself. Daniel wasn't planning on staying home that Tuesday, but something inside told him not to go to work. He called in sick, made himself some breakfast, settled down with a book. For the first time in months, his apartment felt calm and quiet. Around noon, just as he was about to make coffee, there was a knock at the door. He frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened it, his heart nearly stopped. Standing there was Claire, a woman he hadn't seen in almost 15 years. She had been his college sweetheart, the one who disappeared suddenly without explanation. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I had nowhere else to go." Shocked and speechless, Daniel let her in. She looked exhausted, her clothes travel-worn, her eyes carrying secrets. Over cups of coffee, she finally confessed. She had run away years ago because of a dangerous man she was involved with. And now, after all this time, he had found her again. She was on the run, desperate for safety. Daniel listened, torn between disbelief and concern. All these years, he had thought she had simply left him behind. But now, sitting across from him, she looked vulnerable and terrified. Just then, his phone buzzed with a news alert. There had been a violent incident downtown, not far from where his office was. If he had gone to work, he might have been caught in the chaos. Instead, fate had placed him at home, face to face with the past he thought was gone forever. That single day off had not only saved him, but also brought back someone who might change his life all over again. Ryan had never missed a day of work in 5 years. But on this chilly Friday morning, something felt different. He woke up with a strange heaviness in his chest, almost as if the universe itself was whispering, "Stay home." Against his better judgment, he called his boss and said he wouldn't be coming in. With extra time on his hands, Ryan decided to relax. He brewed a cup of coffee, turned on the TV, and stretched out on the couch. At 8:45, he casually glanced out the window toward the busy intersection near his street. What he saw made his blood run cold. A speeding truck had lost control, plowing straight into a line of cars at the exact moment Ryan would normally have been driving through on his commute. The crash was horrific. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and smoke filled the air. Sirens wailed within minutes, and neighbors rushed outside. Ryan stood frozen, gripping the curtain with shaking hands. He knew that intersection by heart. Every morning at exactly 8:45, he was there, waiting at the red light. If he had gone to work, he would have been right in the middle of that wreckage. As emergency crews pulled survivors from the wreck, Ryan sat back down, trembling. He realized how fragile life truly was, that every small decision, even staying home, could mean the difference between life and death. Later that evening, he called his mother, his voice still unsteady. "I don't know why," he admitted, "but something told me not to go today, and it saved my life." From that day on, Ryan promised never to ignore his instincts again. One skip day of work had spared him from tragedy and reminded him how precious every moment truly was. Ethan wasn't the type to miss work, but on a warm Wednesday morning, he felt strangely restless and decided to take the day off. He spent the morning lounging with coffee and a book until a noise outside caught his attention. From his upstairs window, he noticed something odd next door. His neighbor, Mr. Turner, a quiet man who mostly kept to himself, was dragging a large, heavy bag across the backyard. Ethan squinted. The bag looked awkward, as if something solid and bulky was inside. Turner glanced around nervously before shoving it into a shed and locking the door. Ethan's curiosity turned into unease. Why was his neighbor acting so secretive? He pulled out his phone and zoomed in with the camera, snapping a few pictures. Suddenly, Turner looked up, his eyes scanning the windows. Ethan ducked quickly, heart pounding. For the rest of the day, Ethan couldn't shake the image of that bag. His mind ran wild. Was it stolen goods, drugs, or something worse? As evening fell, flashing lights filled the street. Police cars pulled up to Turner's house. Ethan's jaw dropped. Officers stormed the shed, dragging out the same bag he had seen earlier. To his horror, the news later revealed what was inside: stolen weapons linked to a series of robberies across the city. Turner, the quiet neighbor everyone thought harmless, had been hiding a dark double life. Ethan sat by his window in disbelief. If he had gone to work, he would have missed everything. That one skip day had shown him the chilling truth about the man living just a few feet away. From then on, Ethan knew sometimes your instincts keep you home for a reason. Alex had been grinding his office job for years, rarely taking a day off. But on this quiet Saturday morning, he decided he needed a break. He called in, turned over in bed, and smiled at the idea of doing absolutely nothing. Later that afternoon, Alex walked into a small convenience store near his apartment. He wasn't planning to buy much, just some snacks and a soda. But as he waited in line, a brightly colored lottery ticket on the counter caught his eye. He never played, always dismissing it as a waste of money. But today, something felt different. He shrugged and bought one. That evening, Alex sat on the couch, ticket in hand, watching the live lottery draw on TV. The numbers flashed on screen, and his heart began to pound. One by one, his numbers matched. First 2, then 3, then all of them. He stared in disbelief, the tickets slipping from his trembling fingers. He had just won the jackpot. Millions of dollars. For a long moment, he couldn't move. His mind raced. No more debt, no more long hours at the office, no more stress. His entire life had changed because he had decided, on a whim, to skip work and walk into that store. By the next morning, Alex's world was completely different. Reporters crowded outside his building, banks called nonstop, and friends he hadn't heard from in years reached out. But beneath all the chaos, he couldn't stop thinking about the strange twist of fate. One skipped day had led him to unimaginable fortune. He realized that sometimes the smallest choices lead to the biggest turns in life. Mark usually left home early for work, his apartment empty until late at night. But on this particular Monday, he felt unusually tired and decided to take the day off. He made himself breakfast, settled on the couch with a book, and enjoyed the rare peace of being home during the morning. Around noon, he heard a faint sound near the back door. At first, he dismissed it as the wind, but then came the unmistakable creak of the doorknob turning. Mark froze, his heart racing. Someone was trying to break in. Quietly, he grabbed his phone and slipped into the hallway, dialing 911 with trembling hands. From the corner, he saw the door slowly open. 2 masked men entered, carrying bags and tools. They whispered to each other, unaware that Mark was still inside. The dispatcher's calm voice guided him to stay hidden until police arrived. Mark crouched behind the staircase, every second feeling like an eternity. The burglars began rummaging through his living room, stuffing valuables into their bags. Then, the wail of sirens pierced the silence. The burglars panicked, dropping half of what they had taken and bolting out the back door. Within minutes, officers stormed in and secured the place. Shaken but safe, Mark realized the terrifying truth. If he had gone to work like usual, his home would have been completely ransacked. His decision to skip work had not only saved his belongings, but possibly his life. Who knew what would have happened if they had been caught off guard by his return? That day, Mark understood how fate worked in mysterious ways. One unexpected choice had changed everything. Nathan wasn't the type to miss work. He thrived on routine, catching the same bus every morning and sitting at the same desk. But on this rainy Thursday, he woke up with a pounding headache and decided to stay home. He made tea, wrapped himself in a blanket, and turned on the television, grateful for the quiet. At exactly 10:07 a.m., his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Hesitant, Nathan answered. "Is this Nathan Miller?" a trembling voice asked. "Yes," he replied cautiously. "You don't know me," the caller continued, "but I had to warn you. Don't go outside today. Please, just trust me." Before Nathan could respond, the line went dead. His heart raced. Who was that? A prank? A wrong number? Hours later, as Nathan scrolled through the news, his blood ran cold. A major accident had occurred downtown, exactly where he would have been walking if he had gone to work. Multiple cars had collided on the busy intersection, leaving chaos in their wake. The time of the crash? 10:15 a.m., just minutes after the mysterious call. Nathan sat frozen, the phone still in his hand. The caller had known. But how? He tried calling a number back, but it was disconnected. No trace. That night, he replayed the words over and over, "Don't go outside today." The stranger had saved his life, but their identity remained a mystery. From that day on, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was watching out for him. Oliver always lived by the clock. Wake up at 6 o'clock, catch the 7:20 train, and sit at his office desk by 8 o'clock sharp. But one morning, drained from weeks of stress, he decided to break the cycle. He stayed home, thinking a quiet day off would do him good. As he made breakfast, a strange buzzing filled his apartment. The lights flickered, and for a moment, everything went dark. When the lights came back on, Oliver froze. His apartment looked almost the same, yet not quite. The photos on the wall were different, the books on his shelf rearranged, and even his reflection in the mirror looked slightly older. Confused, he stepped outside. The street looked familiar but unsettlingly altered. Shops had different names. Neighbors he had known for years didn't recognize him, and cars he had never seen before lined the road. It was his world, but not his world. Panicked, Oliver returned home and searched for answers. On his kitchen counter, he found a newspaper. The date was correct, but the headlines described events that had never happened in his reality. Wars that never broke out, leaders who were different, even inventions that didn't exist where he came from. By evening, Oliver realized the truth. Skipping work hadn't just given him a day off. It had shifted him into a parallel life. A world so close to his own, yet entirely different. As night fell, the buzzing returned, and the lights flickered again. He woke the next morning in his familiar apartment, everything back to normal. But the memory of that day never left him. One skipped day had shown him that reality was fragile, layered, and far stranger than he ever imagined.